Welcome, everyone, to a special episode of Sass and the Beard. You know, we do this every week on Tuesdays at 7, but tonight, because of something that happened in our community, we wanted to take time to give the instance a special look, and so we are here promoting our Afterschool Special, which literally only happened because of what happened this week at the Russellville School District with the termination of Dr. Gotcher. Just a quick introduction for several of our new viewers this week. My name's Nathan George. And
I'm Kristen Foster.
Yes. And we do this every week on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. here on River Valley Now. So, Kristen, for those of you who are new, she's the Sass and I'm the Beard.
The Sass is very tired today, so there may not be that much Sass. I do think it's important for folks to know, if it's the first time you've watched, how we kind of do this is we're going to give you the factual information that we've been able to find, but we also give our opinion, and we try to make sure that it's very clear when those two things are happening.
We want you to understand the distinction between what is what we know and what is what we think.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to do tonight, talking about kind of how we aren't coming into this, like Nathan and I aren't journalists. We're community members who love this community and want people to be informed on local politics.
Right.
So we're not coming into this like with an unbiased, look necessarily. Yeah. My experience with Dr. Gotcher, part of why this came home to me, and what I think a lot of people have been talking about online is, I have this experience with him that is doesn't make sense, makes this whole decision not make sense. Yeah. For me, I met Dr. Gotcher when he was first on staff as superintendent. I didn't know him before that. And I worked with him to establish a warming center the year we had a really bad cold snap.
Right.
I was working at Hoops for Hunger, doing a fundraiser for Food for Kids, and I walked up to him, had never met him, and told him, I was really worried. I had parents calling me that were scared because it was going to be cold, and I wasn't sure what to do about it, really. And he just jumped into action and made sure we had a place. He showed up in the mornings and helped make sure we had everything we needed, brought in supplies. He was so great. And I worked with him then the entire time I was at Food for Kids, and he constantly was like that. He always was available, anything I needed, super focused on making sure our kids had what they needed. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Dr. Gotcher.
Same. I've known him for over 15 years, back when I was young and dumb and thought I knew everything about the world, and for when I ran for public office, for a long time before I ran for office, he was someone who helped me feel confident enough to actually do that, because, I used to wear a beanie and had long hair, and I was in a rock band at one point in my life, and I just, would people care about things that I had to say, and the way that he always interacted with me and gave credit to the ideas or thoughts that I had, and he was always very encouraging. And even when we disagreed, obviously, we have different political leanings. But he was just very kind and generous. And so I too have a lot of respect for him. And we want you, those of you watching this tonight, to know that we were and are supporters of him, and we want to provide you this information about what happened last night, but we also want you to understand, where we are,
right, where we're coming from.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And none of that is to say that there aren't, valid reasons for people to have frustrations with
right.
Dr. Gotcher on decisions. He's not a perfect person.
Yeah, I disagree with several.
Right. And so, to be fair on that. But let's talk a little bit about how we got here, Nathan, because this is not something that I think if people are not very close to this situation, this came as a big surprise.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But for the folks who have been, in this sort of political kind of stuff that's going on with school board, this wasn't really a big surprise.
Right.
we all kind of had the suspicion that this was coming. And I think that started back with an executive session,
right?
Of about a month or so ago.
Yeah, so this was about a month or so ago at one of the meetings. They've had several meetings that were specially called meetings, and one of those they went into executive session, and after they came out of executive session, they announced that they were going to hire the Friday firm, which has traditionally been a legal firm that deals with special issues related to difficult situations. You know a little bit more about them than I do, Kristen, but it's definitely a firm that is understood to be someone to help them manage a specific employee issue that could be concerning to the community. I think at the time when they did this, we were really concerned that there was some, even bigger like misconduct by some other employee that they were going to need to have to really kind of work their way through without being sued, and so whether it was the situation with the student that was spanked by a teacher, or there were some issues with a coach, like there were several things.
We followed up with the school district. We talked to school board members, and the comments we heard from school board members made us both very suspicious that this was coming. Like we kind of thought that this might be coming, that Dr. Gotcher's term, his contract may not be renewed, or he may not be with us for another school year. We were very surprised, I think, by what happened last night. But we are careful that we try not to bring out information that we can't be pretty certain of, at least have verified and confirmed. So there's often events that are happening that we don't talk about because we can't confirm it. Right. So, y'all hear about some drama, but there's a whole lot of drama that we don't ever get to talk about.
We get sent the drama too. We just don't say it all the time.
Right. And so, so that had been happening. We'd seen that they had hired the Friday firm, or were going to hire the Friday firm, which just was kind of a red flag because you don't hire them unless it's serious. They're they're like probably the best legal firm in the state.
Right.
And so last night we see this kind of a regular meeting, long agenda, lots of stuff on there. Nothing specific to this issue with Dr. Gotcher.
No.
Which I think was something that should have been on the agenda so that people had more awareness to be there and be able to be present for this.
To be fair, there was a little blip at the end of the agenda that was about executive session, but it said
it didn't say.
It said that they might go into executive session to discuss personnel issues, which is their purview and right to do as which elected body.
They can use executive session as a time to go in and talk about. It's almost always limited to employee matters,
right?
Because employees have the right to privacy around their, if like some kind of complaint is brought against them. That is, a lot of things in government are public record, and the school operates as a state agency, and so a lot of that stuff is available, is held out in public, but employment is held back a little separately to protect employees from being kind of dragged publicly for something that didn't really have a due process, or things like that. So so it's important to note, going into executive session discussing privately is not wrong or breaking the rules or doing anything.
It's not shady.
No.
Necessarily.
I would say that, in my opinion, they have pushed the boundary of how far you take that occasionally.
They have done it significantly. And again, we don't know all the personnel issues that they've had to deal with this year. We've spoken to several council members, and they've all discussed that it was a trying year. Not in aside from this situation with Dr. Gotcher, we're not looking for any animosity towards them. Like we wanted to do our due diligence to discuss with them their reasoning for this, and so they have gone into executive session quite a number of times this school year for personnel matters.
Yeah, different. That happens, and every elected body does that. It's not a big deal. Okay, so let's really dig into last night, because we watched this. RVN did a great job of providing live coverage. This was late, which the board chair is. People on school board don't get paid for this position. Right. This isn't like a full-time job or anything. They do this for free as volunteers. They are elected, but they work regular jobs. And I know that the chair works long hours, and they have meetings later at night because of that. So we just want to clear up the things that make people suspicious, right? That aren't necessarily.
Right. However inconvenient they may be for the public to be able to take part or attend which I do think should be a factor in the decision to make those meetings available to public. Like, you know, at city council, those meetings were at whatever time they were, whether you worked another job or not. So I understand that for sure. And I would, but the reason that people believe in conspiracy is because of situations like this. Person can't be at meeting because of job. Meeting is later, makes more difficult for folks with children who are the reasons that the school board exists, you know? Like, so in the meeting, they go through the whole meeting and deal with regular business. And then we get to this moment where one of the school board members says, make a motion to go into executive session to discuss employment and renewal of contract.
The employment of Dr. Gotcher, or the superintendent, is what it said. And so they go into this executive session. Now, the thing with that, they can discuss all these things in there, but then when they come out, they can't make any action in there. They can't vote on anything in executive session. They have to come out and vote on it out in public.
Right.
But they've already made the decision. Just the vote's a formality that the public gets to see the decision that's made, but not the background conversation. Yeah. So they come out, and they did this in two separate motions. The first motion was to immediately place Dr. Gotcher on administrative leave. And they, had motion, a little bit of pause, had a second. Vote. Two members voted against that. Mr. Wesley White and Miss Jeanette Wynn, who are both retired educators. The only retired educators on that elected body. So I just, little note. And so we get to the next point. The next motion.
Which was to basically not renew the contract to where it would be ending in June 30th.
To terminate the contract June 30th. And so we have a motion, and then they ask for a second. The chair asks for a second. You always have to have a second to the motion. And it's just silent.
Yeah, nobody's saying anything.
And so he asks again. And it's silent. And now typically, like I'm watch the legislature a lot. That's part of my real job. And like usually by that point, we're done. We're moving on. But he didn't. One more time, he went, "Can I entertain a second for this motion?" And then finally,
someone says,
"I'll second the motion." And I mean that I was sitting there just like sick to my stomach, going, "If you don't have the guts to come out here and back your motion with your name to it, what are you guys even doing?" Like, that's my opinion, if that wasn't obvious.
Well, and these things are public record, and to stand up and say, I mean, who knows what was said or discussed in executive session, but like they had to stand up and say, yes, I agree. Plus, they would have been in a pickle had they not, because they would have put him on administrative leave, but not terminated his contract if they hadn't gone through with. So then you would have an employed superintendent through the rest, obviously they would have brought it back and done it again.
It was just, to me, it spoke to what a difficult, like conflicting.
Right. That's the point,
weird situation we're in. And so then today we saw, so that they voted, same two voted no, same folks voted for. And then, I watched that vote, and I tend to watch. I watch the people. It's sort of how and I watched Miss Wynn when she was voting, and she just like put her hands over her face, and I just thought, like, this is awful. This is awful.
She was visibly upset.
Yeah. And so anyway, so that passed, and then today we see this information come out. The RVN team did a great job. They sent a Freedom of Information Act request and got this kind of official reason that referenced two incidents where one where Dr. Gotcher had given a key card to the gym to someone who was not an employee, and the second was saying that he had provided, like, shared information about an employment situation that he shouldn't have with another employee. And look, those both, I mean, not to say whether those did or didn't happen. It sounds like they did. Nobody has alleged that they didn't happen. But one of the board members that I talked to about this, I was like, doesn't that seem a little? And they went, petty. It's petty. Like, and it is. It's petty. I mean, it's employees of school districts are not the same as just regular public employees. They're employees of the state. And so they do have some rights that the rest of us don't have at our jobs, where the school can't just fire them for no reason. Like, they have to show reasons. Now, you want to kind of get into the opinion section of this a little bit, because I'm getting angrier the more I talk about it.
Yeah. So, like, obviously, they had to provide a reason. I think I would have felt better if they would have just said, we don't want to go in the direction that he wanted to go.
Yeah.
I know maybe they couldn't do that, but this political posturing or making the public question the integrity of a person who has been a staple in the community. And like, I know that there were people who were like, well, what did he do? Like, if you get fired from school, like, you have to do something really bad. Like, because that's what we tell people. Like, you can't get rid of a teacher, you can't get rid of an administrator. Like, there were people that thought that he did something very egregious. And that was, I mean, the moments that I spoke with school board members, like, that's what I said. Like, I don't, if you don't like the direction, if you don't want his leadership to be in charge, like, why did you do this? Why didn't you just say, this is what we wanted? And they can't discuss it because they're school board members and there's
pending litigation now, because Dr. Gotcher can get an attorney, which he has from what we've been informed, and go back and try to maybe see if they're supposed to pay him out the rest of his contract, because he didn't deserve to be fired. That's something that would be decided upon by a review, not something that we have a say in. But I did think something I meant to mention on the vote last night that I think was so telling. Typically, when you watch committees vote, the chair doesn't vote.
Yeah.
The chair's only, like, they run the meeting, and they only vote if there's a tie.
He's the executor of the meeting, right. And then if it goes
that's
through,
kind of typical parliamentary sort of procedure. But I noticed last night that the chair, Mr. Cloud, voted. Now, this is Chris Cloud, not Joe Cloud. He's the state rep. People get confused sometimes on that. Yeah. That he was like, the chair votes yes. Yeah. The chair votes yes. Like, he made it a point. And to me, some of the things I've seen about this make me say that those questions, that's just my opinion, but that those reasons they gave just don't hold water, man. Like, there's so much about this that seems personal, that seems like anger towards Dr. Gotcher, like you said, like, that this was to make him kind of look bad. Now, we heard from reliable sources, but I've not gotten, like, full confirmation of this, that he was asked to resign and declined to do that. Now, that didn't come from Dr. Gotcher. It did come from involved parties. And so I think that, I think that we saw this start long before that executive session.
Yeah.
A month ago, where they hired the Friday firm. I think we really saw this start the day Dr. Gotcher went on the casino committee for the city. That is my opinion of kind of where this started to come back. And not that the casino is the whole thing here, but that these kind of personality conflicts over local politics, over issues like the casino, over issues that we're seeing in the state legislature around how teachers interact with students who are transgender, who are LGBTQ, that there are issues that are happening about that within the school. And I think those kind of political identity politics issues have way more to do with this than a key card.
Yeah. Well, and if you remember that time specifically, I mean, he was the chair of that committee. And he was basically forced to be because no one else wanted to be the chair. But he recused from voting whenever there was a time, on that committee to choose a vendor that the city would sponsor, which was the whole point of the committee of itself. He recused from himself from voting, which I mean, out of respect for his job at the school, he didn't want to. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that this is my hot take, and if you follow me on Facebook, I made a video this morning at 8 in the morning while I was trying to gather my thoughts for the day, and like, if this could happen to Dr. Gotcher, who, for those of you that know and love him, or even if you may have had issue with him, you still can have respect for him as a human being. Like, this happened to him, who is someone that many people have high levels of integrity all across the state, not just in Russellville. I mean, he's highly revered across the state of Arkansas when it comes to education, and now he doesn't have a job in our town. For what? That could happen. What about someone who wants to run for office, or someone who works at the school who has a different viewpoint about politics, or has on a political item, or has a different thought process on education, or creates a plan that is a little more forward thinking or backward thinking? Like, this has higher implications than just personal, personal issues. So
a lot of questions on the feed. There's a lot of comments and questions, trying to go back and see where we have. So someone said, do all the school members live in the zones they represent? That's not something we've looked into. Now, there are some at-large positions that do not have to live in a specific zone. There's 2 of those. But listen, if you followed the quorum court, or there are 3. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. If you followed the quorum court the last couple of years, you would know that residency is always, it's not always a set in stone issue. That's kind of flexible around here. So theoretically, yes, they should live in their district.
They should. We don't know of any. If you know of some,
Someone asked, why did they fight to keep him instead of allowing him to go to Conway if he didn't represent what RSD wanted? That's an excellent question.
Did they fight to keep him?
I don't know that they fought.
I've seen that comment several times on social media today, and I don't remember, this is 100% the specifics, but I think that Conway chose one of the other applicants. I believe at that time Dr. Gotcher was very ill with COVID. Right. Yeah. And I assumed that was a big part of what kind of just, the timing and all that. Now, one person said, and I want to make sure we clarify this, that he gave out RSD employee pay. I don't think that's true. That's available on the website. I can show y'all every employee in the school district's pay. That's public record. So that, he may have, they did state that he shared some information inappropriately, but they didn't say what it was. Right. And there are things that should be kept private. Now, he didn't give out personal information of the employee. Yeah. He gave out information about an employee to another employee, which is different.
So, it's a lot of drama. I know people are very upset and stressed. I think the big takeaway I hope that people get from this is how important it is to pay attention to your local politics. We have a school board election coming up. Each school board, there's one every year. The members, they have kind of weird, wonky schedules and stuff.
Yes, it seems like every year there will be an election for school board.
Someone said something about Craig Cloud at Friendship. Different person, not connected to this. That's a totally different person.
This is a different cloud.
We got lots of clouds around here. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of them are related, but they're different folks.
Yes.
Okay, so somebody said, what recourse does the community have?
That's a good question, and this is something that I have been dealing with all day today. There are people that very much care about Dr. Gotcher and want him to be reinstated as superintendent. However, that for first and foremost, Dr. Gotcher would have to want to work with the school board again, and B, the school board would have to rescind whatever decision and mea culpa. I don't know that that's possible. I don't think there's any legal way that you could make him be the superintendent again. Like, I'm sure there's not.
I think that's water.
Yeah. Now, there may be litigation that awards
Oh.
Dr. Gotcher some funds for his, litigated mistreatment, if that's a decision that is come to. But
yeah.
But there's no way to make him superintendent.
But really, there was there's a really good question here that from Renee that we're going to get into. But so one of the ways that the community does have recourse, though, is through elections.
Yes.
These are elected members of the school board. There's going to be a school board election May 11th through the 18th. This year, Zone 1, I believe, is
right.
up,
Zone 1,
and that's out by Center Valley kind of area. Only people who live in that area can vote in that election. This time, it is the school board president, Chris Cloud, who is on the ballot, and he does have an opponent, Holly Henderson Hall. We did an interview with Miss Hall last,
which will be aired on Tuesday.
Yeah, coming up on Tuesday,
7:00.
So that is good vote. I mean, the elections have consequences.
If there was a whole new school board in 3 or 4 years, maybe. But.
Okay, we had this on our list. We didn't talk about it, and it's a great question.
Yeah.
How was the interim superintendent notified to be in attendance? Wouldn't there have to be communication between the board members prior to the meeting? This is something a bunch of people have kind of questioned today. And, if you know freedom of information at all, you know that meetings, decisions by elected bodies are supposed to be made in public. But somehow the interim superintendent that they chose...
So there had to be a decision to invite him
was already there at the meeting.
Unless he's been at every school board meeting in the last several months, or just randomly chose to be there. But I don't think they would just pull from the room. I would assume there were also qualified people in the room that were educators and administrators already working within the district that they could have, if that was just... but they didn't have let's have a discussion and we'll decide tomorrow.
Yeah.
It was that night at the meeting at midnight. They
I could see, I could see going in and having the discussion and going, okay. That didn't really surprise me. They were going to try to go either we're going to have a committee to find somebody, or we're going to, get the assistant superintendent and install him or whatever. Because you can't just leave it without somebody running it. And so I get that, but the fact that the person that they had picked was already there, like ready to go. And this isn't like a meeting where tons of people show up. School board meetings, you don't have people there.
Right.
It very much seems to be, it implies that there had been a decision made before this meeting that they were going to knew they were going to let Dr. Gotcher go, knew they were going to put this person in. And if that's the case, that would seem to be a very clear violation of the Freedom of Information Act. I say seem because the way that process works, nothing is ever clear until a decision is made. But it's important to remember that if they were found of violating the Freedom of Information Act, it's similar to getting a speeding ticket. Nobody's going to jail. They're not going to kick everybody off. That's not how any of that works.
Right.
The kind of the worst thing that would happen is they'd make them redo the meeting.
Right.
And talk about it in public.
Yeah. So it's one of those.
Not to say you shouldn't push that sometimes.
Things. Yeah.
If they were to be investigated, somebody asked who would investigate them. A complaint could be filed with the Attorney General's Office for Freedom of Information Act. I believe it goes to Attorney General's Office. It can also be filed with the Ethics Commission, and they investigate that. Now, maybe the Ethics Commission is the first step. It's been a while since I've done one. I think, yeah. So anyways, call the AG's office if you really want to know. They're very friendly and helpful. The Attorney General is the person who's responsible with making sure the Freedom of Information Act is applied and administered in our state. But I think the Ethics Commission actually does the investigation.
Someone says, why was Dr. Gotcher at the meeting? It's his job to be there. He has to report to the school board. He wasn't in the executive session, but he was at the meeting because as superintendent, he has to report to the school board. And it's his job to be there. you guys keep asking. This is what we do. You ask the questions and we try to answer them to the best of
where
our
we
ability.
can.
Yeah.
Somebody said they know Dr. Gotcher will go into bigger and better things, and I think that is true. You know, this is sad. The board members I talked to today on both sides of the issue, you know, didn't feel good about the personal impact of all this.
Right.
You know, there may have been some personality conflicts happening, but I don't think anybody feels very good about this.
Maybe they legitimately felt like what he did was wrong.
You think so? Really think so?
I'm gonna shut up.
Okay. So
I want to talk about the school board election.
Yes.
Because you found out some really interesting information. So the school board election for Zone 1 is what date?
May 11th through the 18th. 18th is the election day.
You can vote at Pope County Election Headquarters. There are early voting times and dates. I don't have those off the top of my head right now, but they're posted on Pope County Election Headquarters website.
And Facebook page.
Facebook.
I know on election day, voting is always like 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Pope County Election Headquarters is about the only state or municipal sponsored social media page that updates with information at real time that is actually helpful.
I don't know who does that page, but they do a really good job.
They do a great job. So follow them, give them love, and they give you information.
So, yeah, I did find out something really interesting about the school board election, and I think this is important also in connection with the decision made last night. During the, I guess before the school board meeting, the county Republican Party had their regular monthly meeting, and Holly Hall, who was speaking at the meeting, which is common, the school board candidates, city council, JP, kind of these local candidates, they'll go to both parties and talk because it's not really partisanship. You know, it's not supposed to be partisan at the school board. And so now, Holly didn't tell me about this. Somebody who was there present at the meeting, because I know it may surprise some of y'all, but Republicans are friends with us. That Democrats are friends with us. It's surprising.
We're friends with both.
But there was a lobbyist there last night for a special interest group that is a very, very conservative group, which is, not surprising necessarily at the Republican meeting. But the lobbyist came like prepared to go after Miss Hall in her comments, go after had her, voting history, like at the polls, she's what primary she voted in, all this different stuff.
Wow.
And that group, I mean, they're very involved in politics, have a huge influence. And it scares me a little bit to think that these kind of groups are getting involved in our local school board.
Like school board, they care about the school board. Like, okay, for those of you who hadn't watched this show recently or ever, we've been talking over the last several months about how it used to be said that all politics was local. And now, over the last several weeks, we have seen in our community, which is what we focus on, a little bit of state, mostly local. In our community, we are seeing more and more of a drive for all politics to be national. And so we're seeing different things going on in the city and in the county, and now apparently the school board, that are political partisanship style issues that literally have no purview in these local decisions that are being made. The amount of potholes getting fixed doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. Whether or not your school has enough teachers to teach the students and to spend the property tax money that you pay every year doesn't have to do whether or not you're a Republican or a Democrat. So it's kind of concerning to see these issues.
Just to see that people that lobbyists would even care about this race.
Right.
And I don't think that that's the whole reason he was there. I believe he was there for other reasons as well. But just that he came prepared to come at her for that just really surprised me. Now, Mr. Cloud wasn't there. He provided a
Just at the school board
statement
meeting.
because he was at the school board meeting,
Yeah.
and you know, we invited him to be on our show, like Miss Hall, who's got the interview coming up on
Right.
Tuesday. He declined to participate after we reached out with him several times trying to coordinate. So somebody said on here, this is so funny, that I think this is probably where I want to leave it because this is just perfect. This will circle back to the casino and the athletic department.
Everything is a casino, man.
And the athletic department.
Yeah.
I think that is probably very accurate and funny.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know this has been rough. I don't think there's anything that's going to change this at this point. One of the things, though, that can be important going forward is to really keep an eye, because they're going to have to hire somebody new. And so the public can have influence on that. You know, you show up to these school board meetings and make your voice heard if you have kids in the school district, especially. And make sure you're letting your school board member know what you think. Because I tell you what, nothing scares politicians more than voters paying attention.
Pissed off voters that call and communicate, and you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be, I mean, we talk about this a lot on the show. Like, the way you engage with them is you say, I have a grievance, or I have a praise, and I would like you to know about it, or I really support this, or I don't support that, and I want you to know about it, and I'm going to encourage other people to support or not support this issue. And you show up to meetings, and they get to know who you are by seeing you. And I know, like, for those of us with especially like little children, like how hard this is, but I do this kind of work every day, and I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and you can do it too if you care about your community. You can find the time to send an email, to make a phone call, and that's because that's what it takes. If you care about your city council, your quorum court, your school board, about the decisions that they're making, you can take the time to spend, an hour a week making your voice heard. Mm-hmm. Because that's the first thing they say whenever people get on social media and they complain about, like, well, why don't we have a water park, or why don't we have this or that? The first thing that the politicians will say is, well, nobody told me they wanted one.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true. So please, share this. Help us get the word out. We're trying to answer as many questions as possible. There's going to be things we never get the answer to here. There's going to be information that they're not going to be able to talk about because there is going to be ongoing litigation, most likely, around this. So, remember that our school board members, even though we may disagree with the decision, personally, I disagree with the decision, or you may agree with the decision, but remember, they are just regular people in our community. Like, please don't go crazy.
This is their unpaid part-time job that they spend a significant portion of their time trying to deal with. Do we have any more comments before we?
There's some great comments in here. People are funny, and I love y'all. But catch us back. We're not going to be here for the next couple of weeks.
Right.
But we will be back after that with lots of local stuff every week.
Share this video with your friends. Let them know what's going on locally about politics in our community. Check us out next week at 7 p.m. for an interview with Holly Henderson Hall and her run for school board in Zone 1. And we will see you guys again next time. Thank you.